In this module, let's talk about shipping. Now that your product is in the process of being manufactured, you'll need to start thinking about how you're going to get your goods from the supplier all the way to Amazon's fulfillment center and then ultimately the end customer. This module is specifically for international shipping since most of you guys will be choosing factories that are overseas. If your supplier is in the same country as to where your goods are being sold, then you can simply use Amazon's shipping services to get them into Amazon's distribution centers. We'll cover that at the end of this module, and that step is similar for both international shipments and domestic shipments. If your supplier is in a different country from where the goods are being sold, then we'll need to be thinking about how to import these into your country, and this module is specifically for you. There are multiple ways to get your product from the supplier to Amazon, and you have a few choices that you'll need to make. One is, how will you ship it? Are you going to ship it by sea on the slow boat or on a plane in air? You'll also need to organize and facilitate this process. And to do so, you're going to want to use a freight forwarder or your supplier's freight forwarder. We'll go over all these options and help you decide which is the right one for your product. We'll also cover some of the other basics, like the terminology that's commonly used when discussing shipping so you know exactly what your supplier or freight forwarder is talking about. We'll also give an intro into customs and duties and what's required there and what to expect during the process. We'll also teach you a little bit about how to find a freight forwarder and working with third-party logistics companies, as well as how to set up your first FBA shipment with Amazon's shipping services. To start, let's go over the typical importing process to give you guys an idea of how your product gets from one side of the world all the way to the other. Although there are a lot of ways to transport goods, the one I'm going to teach you about here is the easiest and most common way to ship goods to Amazon. We'll be going over each of these steps in detail in the following lessons, as well as have some additional videos in the future to cover alternative or more advanced shipping topics like shipping directly to Amazon from your supplier. The first step is getting the finished product from the supplier to the international port, which is going to be in the port of the supplier's country. This can be an airport or a seaport, depending on how you've decided to ship the goods. How the goods get from the supplier's factory or their warehouse to the port is going to depend on the terms that you set with your supplier when you make the purchase. This will most likely be EXW or EXWorks or FOB, which is free on board. We'll get into what those mean a little bit later, but this basically dictates if the supplier transports the goods to the port or if it's up to you to ship the goods from the supplier's factory to the port. Once the goods are at the port, they will be put onto the vessel that will transport them. Again, this could be a plane or a cargo ship. The goods travel from the international port on the vessel to the domestic port, which is the port in the country where the goods will be sold, most likely the US. Once the goods reach the domestic port, they're going to be checked in through the country's importing and customs process, if applicable. Some small air shipments may not need to go through a full customs clearance if they meet certain criteria. Most of the time, you're going to need to hire a customs broker to clear the shipment through customs for you. The freight forwarder typically hires this person and handles this process for you. Once the goods clear customs and any duties or taxes have been paid, they'll be sent to the local prep facility that you've chosen. You then need to get it from this port into Amazon's distribution centers. Your options there are either to ship it directly from the port into Amazon's distribution centers, or what most Amazon sellers do is ship them to a prep facility or to their own home to inspect the goods and perform a few other items that we'll be talking about later. This is the basic overview of the shipping and importing process. In the rest of the lessons in this module, we'll be going into more detail about each respective section. Next up is going to be diving deeper into whether you choose to ship via air or sea. I'll see you there. In this lesson, let's talk about the two different international shipping options, air or sea. The major difference between these two methods are going to be the transit time and the costs associated with them. Air shipping is going to be faster, but costs more. Shipping by air usually takes 5 or maybe 10 days, and ballpark costs around $5 per kilogram. Sea shipping is going to be slower, but costs less. Shipping by sea usually takes 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the starting location and the destination. Sea shipping, on average, costs less than $1 per kilogram. However, the rule of thumb for sea shipping doesn't work quite as well because it's more so about the volume of the goods. Here at Jungle Scout, we're all about data. So to get the most accurate estimates of both the costs and the transit times, we recommend enlisting a freight forwarder early on in the process to get that quote. Also, if you're unsure about which option to choose, get a few quotes from different freight forwarders and/or your supplier, and that can help you choose. With just some basic information about your product, freight forwarders can give you a much closer estimate for both sea and air shipping than using a generic calculation based on weight alone. This can help you properly budget these costs as well as plan ahead for when you're ready to ship. Cost and time are the biggest factors to consider, but the weight, dimensions, and value of your product will also play into the decision of which transport method is right for you. Most times, you'll want to aim for sea shipping since it saves so much money. You'll need to factor the larger transit times into your ordering and replenishment timelines to avoid stockouts. There are, however, some instances where air shipping is a better option. The times when it may be better to use air over sea would be for small shipments or small and lightweight items. For example, if your product's really small and it's light and there's not going to be much of a difference between air and sea shipping, or if transit time is your top priority. For example, you've done a micro launch in order to test the order, or if the busy season's right around the corner and you need to get into Amazon ASAP. There are a few other things that I've learned over the years when shipping different products by sea or by air. One is air shipments do have hazardous materials restrictions, where ocean shipments have less of them. So for example, if your product is flammable or has gases in it, or has lithium-ion batteries in it, you may not be able to ship via air. I've also found air freight to be more reliable and have a better track record than shipping via sea. And another thing that is important to some people is the environmental impact. Now, I wouldn't say either of these are really green, but ocean shipments do tend to have less of an environmental impact than air shipments do. If your shipment is under 200 kilograms, then you actually may be a good candidate just to ship the goods via UPS or DHL, in which case you don't need to hire a freight forwarder. For everyone else, we recommend that you do hire a freight forwarder to help you through the process. As a recap, the top things to remember when choosing air or sea shipping is the time and cost trade-off. Enlist the help of a freight forwarder to get the most accurate estimates and aim for sea shipping in most cases to keep more of your profits for yourself. Every dollar you save on shipping goes right into your pocket. And then next lesson, we're going to be going over the common and kind of confusing acronyms and terms that are used when talking about shipping.